Chapter 16. Dante's heart raced, pounding against his chest like a frantic drum as adrenaline surged through him. This was the moment. A dark thrill coursed through him, sparking a sense of urgency. He was happy to have felt a familiar sensation in his hands, a tingling warmth that hinted at the electricity building inside him. He could feel the lightning just waiting to break free. He knew it was imperative to try to control the overwhelming power so he doesn't incinerate everything around him.
Form up!
Amedria shouted, her voice slicing through the thick tension in the air. She had her hand on her sword, transitioning from a cautious observer to a warrior ready for battle. The 5 royal guards quickly arranged themselves, shields overlapping and spears aimed. Rourke and his squad weren't as organized, but they were resolute, pulling out their weapons prepared to do what they must to survive.
Protect the wagons!
Amedria ordered, her gaze falling on 3 servants huddled in fear by the supply cart. They looked like frightened mice, their faces pale and hands trembling. A troll looked over after having picked up their scent, let out a horrible roar that sounded like stones grinding together, and lumbered forward, its massive, filthy arms swinging carelessly. 2 more trolls, alerted by the noise, raised their heads, their yellow eyes locking onto the group. Dante was overwhelmed with a mix of fury and excitement. Could these vile creatures really think it's all right to gobble up anyone who accidentally steps into their turf? His fingers were twitching, and he could practically feel the energy buzzing around him. The urge to unleash his new powers on them, to reduce them to nothing but ashes, was incredibly strong. The thought that he might finally be seen as useful was almost too thrilling to handle.
Steady!
Amedria called out, surprisingly calm despite the rising tension. As the first troll began to climb up the gorge, its giant claws tearing into the loose dirt, Dante didn't wait for any orders. He raised his hand, driven by the need to show off his new power and control. A jagged bolt of chaotic raw lightning shot from his palm and slammed into the troll's chest with a loud thud, sending sparks flying everywhere. The troll let out a roar, a mix of pain and primal rage, yet shockingly, it hardly stopped. Its tough, leathery skin, resembling hardened mud, absorbed the blow, leaving only a singed mark behind. Dante's eyes widened in disbelief. His lightning should have done more. This wasn't just a little zap. It was a full-on surge. Frustration surged within him, causing the crackling electricity in the air to thicken and intensify.
They have tough hides!
Amedria shouted, her sword drawn and gleaming in the fading light.
Concentrate your attacks. Don't let them get too close.
The other 2 trolls were now climbing up, slowly but steadily. One of Rourke's men, the hefty orc, raised his axe.
Trolls. They'll eat anything that's alive, Captain, and they regenerate too.
Amedria's eyes narrowed in determination.
Regenerate? That's going to complicate things. We need to take them down fast.
The first troll reached the top of the gorge, its massive form blocking the narrow path. Its flat yellow eyes locked onto the nearest soldier. It swung its huge arm, a move that could have crushed a weaker man. The soldier, a young recruit, just managed to lift his shield in time, but the force of the impact sent a jolt through his arm, staggering him back and leaving him pale with shock. Dante, ignoring Amedria's frantic commands, turned his attention back to the first troll. His anger boiled inside him, a mix of frustration and indignation. He knew his magic hadn't been enough. He needed more. He needed to make them pay. With a surge of energy, he unleashed another bolt, thicker and more volatile, crackling with unrestrained power. This one hit the troll's leg, causing the beast to stagger and let out a terrible roar. But just as quickly it started to regain its balance, its charred flesh rapidly healing itself. A realization struck Dante. These weren't just mindless creatures, they were a perfect nightmare. The initial adrenaline rush he felt began to fade, replaced by a chill of genuine fear. But beneath that fear, anger simmered. Anger at the trolls for being a threat, anger at his own magic for falling short, and anger at the world, which always seemed to throw obstacles his way. As if his emotions fueled the chaos, the air around him crackled energetically, the hairs on his arms standing on end. He could feel the raw power coursing through him, no longer just tingling, but surging like a wild storm. This was his mana, vast and unpredictable, responding to his turbulent feelings. The kingdom had called him the Cursed Prince for a reason. Amedria noticed the shift in his energy and glanced at him, her eyes wide with a blend of concern and hope.
Dante! Target their eyes or joints!
She yelled, parrying a powerful but clumsy strike from the first troll with her sword, the metal ringing in the air. But Dante was too focused to hear her advice. This was the first real fight he had ever faced, and adrenaline pumped through his veins. Nearby, one of the seasoned royal guards lunged forward, driving his spear into the troll's arm. Thick, black blood spilled from the wound, a foul, oily substance that quickly filled the air with a rancid smell. The soldiers closest to the bleeding creature, including the young recruit who had been knocked back earlier, began to cough violently, their eyes watering. A wave of dizziness hit them, making their movements clumsy and slow.
Their blood is toxic.
Lieutenant Rourke shouted, dodging a strike from another troll.
It's causing paralysis. Stay clear of their wounds.
Listen up. Hold your breath when you go in to strike.
Amedria shouted, her voice strained as she ducked another attack.
Don't breathe in their blood!
Dante noticed the effects. Soldiers near the bleeding troll were staggering, their bodies locking up with panic and confusion. His anger sharpened, not just towards the trolls, but also at the helplessness of his guards, at the sheer injustice of it all. He was supposed to be a powerful mage and a prince, yet here he was, watching his soldiers fall to a noxious substance. He felt a storm brewing in his chest, a low rumble that shook him to his core. He wasn't trying to aim anymore. He was simply releasing the fury within. With both hands thrust forward, twin bolts as thick as tree trunks burst forth from his palms. One struck the first troll square in the head with a heavy crackle, making it stagger back, dazed and confused. The other bolt hit the third troll in the back, causing it to topple over and lose its footing.
It's working! Keep it going, Prince!
Amedria shouted, seizing the moment to plunge her sword deep into the first troll's shoulder. The dark blood streamed out, but she held her breath, her face set in grim determination. Rourke's men were either tougher or maybe just more reckless, seemed to handle the paralyzing stench a bit better, though they still moved awkwardly. The hefty orc swung his axe like a maniac, grunting fiercely as he cut through the third troll, sending out another spray of foul blood. Dante kept a close eye on him, trying to figure out if he was too perfect in his movements. He appeared to genuinely take on the trolls, but Dante's deep-rooted skepticism gnawed at him. Dante's attention shifted to the servants clustered by the supply wagon. They were huddled closely, their soft whimpers barely cutting through the sounds of trolls roaring and steel clashing. Anxiety twisted in his gut. He had to keep them safe. He had to put an end to this chaos. As the battle grew fiercer, Dante glanced back at the orc, but then he noticed the beast woman. She was a blur of dark gray fur with black stripes and lean muscle, gracefully dancing around the outskirts of the fight. She was a tiger beast woman with loose robes that hid her slender body. While the soldiers were struggling, she flowed through the chaos with an unsettling elegance, always just out of reach of the trolls, yet right where the action was. She wasn't just fighting, she was watching and analyzing. Then it happened. A young royal guard, the very recruit who had been hit first, stumbled as the paralyzing fumes took full effect. He dropped his shield, gasping for breath, terror in his wide eyes. The giant troll raised its club-like arm for the kill. The beast woman was closest to the soldier. Dante watched as she flicked her wrist, and for a brief moment, a small, dark, shimmering blue vial appeared in her hand. She uncorked it with her teeth in a quick motion, and in another flash, ran her wickedly curved dagger along the vial's edge. The blue liquid shimmered sickly in the dim light. No one else seemed to notice. Everyone was too wrapped up in their own desperate survival. She didn't seem interested in the young soldier, and seemed like she ignored his presence. As the troll's arm came crashing down, she lunged past the paralyzed guard, using him as a shield. Her blade, slick with fresh liquid, struck not at the troll's head or heart, but precisely behind its knee, leaving a faint ribbon of blue streaking down its leg. The troll unleashed an angry roar, clearly in pain, but it didn't stop its assault, completely overlooking the beast woman. One of the soldiers tried to help by focusing on the troll, but it was too late for the young recruit. With a brutal swipe, the troll's arm slammed into the soldier's head, producing a horrifying crunch. The soldier's body crumpled to the ground, lifeless, his shield now just a forgotten object at his side. His crushed form turned into a gruesome mess of flesh, with his head and chest rendered into chunks. The troll, briefly sidetracked, plopped down and started ripping into the carcass, munching on bone and meat as if they were sweet treats. Dante's stomach twisted.
That looked like poison. A soldier using poison in the heat of battle? Sacrificing a comrade?
Alarm bells rang in his mind. This was not how soldiers conducted themselves. This was how predators hunted. His previous suspicions about the orc faded, replaced by a chilling certainty focused on the beast woman. Meanwhile, Amidria was a blur of activity, taking on a second troll, her sword flashing like silver. She moved fluidly, ducking under massive attacks, parrying blows that would easily break bones, and slicing through the air with precision. Each cut drew black blood as she severed tendons and carved deep gashes into its tough skin. She was a true master of the blade, moving with a speed that was almost impossible to follow. The troll roared in frustration, its body becoming increasingly disfigured by her relentless strikes. But it wasn't finished yet. The first troll, enraged at the sight of its injured ally, growled and charged at Amidria, forcing her to break away from her initial opponent. The troll she had been battling was healing at an alarming rate, its wounds closing up quickly, though its movements remained awkward from the earlier damage. Amidria, despite her skills, was clearly frustrated. Trolls don't work together, she thought, a subtle frown crossing her face. This wasn't just a random attack. They were too brutish and territorial for that. There was something about this group. They were working in sync. A shiver ran down her spine. Someone was orchestrating this. Two more royal guards, panic in their eyes from the paralyzing stench that filled the air, fell prey to the advancing trolls. One was grabbed by a huge brute and brutally torn in half, his screams abruptly silenced as his body fell apart on either side of the monster. The second guard, too slow to escape, was devoured alive, his cries muffled as he vanished into the troll's hungry maw. The horrific scene sent fresh waves of fear through the remaining soldiers and ignited a fierce anger in Dante. The third troll was blissfully munching away, completely oblivious to the soldier who was desperately slashing and stabbing at its back. It seemed like the soldier recognized the young recruit, because tears flowed down his face as he fought against the massive creature. Eventually, the troll either wrapped up its meal or, annoyed, swung its fist backward, catching the soldier off guard and sending him hurtling 20 feet away. He coughed up a mouthful of blood and struggled to rise. The troll, eyeing him with interest, licked its lips in eager anticipation. 3 of his men were dead, murdered, and that beast woman, the assassin, was still lurking around, likely looking for the perfect moment to strike while the chaos unfolded. Dante was aware that his magic was unpredictable, reflecting the turmoil he felt inside. He desperately needed to tap into that lightning energy. He had to concentrate and turn this anger and frustration into something powerful and focused. He shut his eyes for a brief moment, taking a shaky breath, trying to push through the blaze of fury to access the lightning within him. When he opened his eyes, they were glowing softly, not with erratic sparks, but with a steady, deep energy. He raised his hands, not in a wild, panicked motion, but with a newfound sense of control, born from desperation. He wasn't just targeting one troll, he aimed for the very air around them.
Fuck off, you disgusting bastards!
Dante shouted, his voice booming with an unnatural force, the words exploding from his throat. Amidria, Taken aback by the sheer power of energy radiating from him, instinctively pulled back, dragging a partially paralyzed soldier with her. Rourke's men, caught off guard, glanced at Dante in confusion. Some hesitated, while others were too engrossed in the fight to react. A deafening crack echoed through the gorge, followed by a blinding flash. It wasn't just a bolt of lightning, but a massive wave of energy that struck the three trolls all at once. The air around them transformed into a swirling vortex of blue-white light. The trolls roared, but this time it was a cry of sheer agony. Their thick hide, which had shrugged off individual strikes, writhed under the overwhelming force. Their enormous bodies shook, their yellow eyes wide with terror. The smell of ozone filled the air, briefly drowning out the stench of blood and decay. The ground trembled. When the blinding light faded, the aftermath was nothing short of devastation. The three trolls remained standing, a clear sign of their remarkable toughness, though they were in rough shape. Their skin was blackened and cracked, emitting steam. One had a leg twisted at an odd angle. Another had a right arm that dangled uselessly, dislocated at the shoulder. They moved in a jerky, painfully slow manner. Although their super regeneration was still working, it struggled to cope with the severe injuries they'd endured. Thick, smoky blood oozed from their wounds, more vapor than liquid thanks to the heat, but the foul smell seemed to have been muted by the crackling energy around them. Dante stood there, panting and shaking from the after effects of the power he had just unleashed. His vision swayed, and a sharp pain throbbed in his head, but a grim sense of accomplishment filled him. He had done it. He had struck them all.
Now!
Amedria shouted, seizing the moment.
Finish them off! Target their legs! Take them down!
The remaining soldiers, energized by Dante's powerful display, charged forward. With the trolls badly crippled and their regeneration falling short against the immense damage, the soldiers finally gained the upper hand. Spears struck their eyes, swords sliced into vulnerable joints, and axes plunged deep into their weakened flesh. One troll, still able to move, attempted to strike with its good arm, but a coordinated assault from Rourke's team brought it crashing down. Its roars turned into gurgles as they repeatedly drove their spears into its skull. The second troll, with one leg useless, flailed helplessly at the air until one bloody soldier, driven by pure rage, drove his sword into its head with a sickening thud. The creature twitched for a moment before going still. The last troll, struggling and slow, was trapped by Amedria and the seasoned guard. Amedria swiftly targeted its tendons, effectively hamstringing it. As it fell, the veteran guard thrust his spear into its chest, and Amedria followed up with a precise jab to its throat. The troll squirmed, its remaining yellow eye fixed on her in a desperate, silent plea, before its massive body finally collapsed, lifeless. Silence enveloped the gorge, interrupted only by the heavy breathing of the soldiers and the faint crackling of residual magic in the air. The mingling smells of ozone and decay served as a grim reminder of the fierce battle that had just taken place. Dante staggered forward, his legs unsteady and his adrenaline fading, leaving him feeling deeply exhausted. He looked at the fallen trolls, their massive bodies now still and steaming. He had done it. He had protected his subjects. Yet he quickly searched for the beast woman. She stood calmly at the edge of the gorge, her curved dagger cleaned and sheathed, as if she had simply watched a minor conflict unfold. She showed no sign of wanting to escape. Her subtle use of poison had gone entirely unnoticed amidst the chaos. Then their eyes met. It was a brief encounter, but it struck Dante deeply. Her gaze wasn't that of a soldier or a friend. It was cold and completely emotionless, yet it held an unsettling intelligence. An overwhelming sense of danger washed over him, more intense than the raw threat posed by the trolls. He felt like a mouse facing a lion, every instinct telling him to flee, to fight, or defend himself from her. This was the real threat. This was the assassin. Amedria walked over to him, her face a blend of amazement and steely resolve.
Prince Dante, that was truly incredible. Your magic.
She hesitated, then shook her head, the initial thought returning to her.
But those trolls, they were too well coordinated. This isn't normal. Someone has to be controlling them, or influencing them somehow.
Despite the harshness of the battle they'd just faced, her eyes now showed a hint of a disturbing realization. Dante nodded in response, taking in the sight of the remaining soldiers, their numbers severely dwindled. 3 were dead, 2 royal guards and 1 of Rourke's men. He had saved the rest, but the sense of victory felt empty. He had unleashed a frightening amount of power, yet his rage nearly overwhelmed him, almost leading him into recklessness. The true threat was still lurking around, quiet and dangerous. The way to the Elven territory was now clearer, but it was also far more perilous. The missing map wasn't just a simple mistake. The snake attack wasn't a coincidence. And those trolls? They were by no means random. Someone was clearly targeting him with a calculated approach, and that someone was dangerously close. Dante glanced at Amidria and then at the weary soldiers. He still didn't fully trust any of them, not now, especially with a concealed assassin in their midst, someone with a cold and precise ruthlessness. It seemed the world was intent on testing him, pushing him to his limits. Each test only fueled his anger, a potent and unpredictable force that posed as much of a threat to him as it did to his foes.
We need to get moving.
Dante said, his voice strained, scanning the area anxiously. Amedria nodded, her expression serious. She turned to rally the remaining healthy soldiers, to assist those who were incapacitated, and to care for the fallen. As night fell, the dark woods that once seemed like just a backdrop now felt more like an unseen predator. The battle might have concluded, but the real danger was just beginning.